Hi, welcome to the bathtub, where when you hear this iconic theme song, and you have to wait a minute because we don't know how to work our the technical stuff here is totally beyond us, completely beyond us here at the bathtub, and we're here. This is what is known as pointless adventures in literature. These are adventures that are either point. We promise you this at the bathtub. They're either pointless, they're either meaningless. They're pointless or meaningless. Sometimes they're pointless and meaningless, but they're always pointless, meaningless, or both. And you can bank on that at the bathtub. It's one of our few disclaimers. We promise you that. And if we don't do that, you can sue us. So we're doing the second part. We have Lucky's at my feet. We have Dodo has been banished to the hallway for once. Normally we banish Lucky because she's been so aggressive lately and so crazy. But Dodo wouldn't shut up because she was upset because Lucky was in here, so she couldn't get out, and then she was beeping. And so I put her in the hallway for a bit. I had to film a few of these a few times. And I'm going to do this fairly quick, as usual. Nothing comes easy here at the bathtub. You know, I know it looks like I live a life of luxury, but I got 2 pets and a wife. I got a lot of demands over the course of the day. It's a lot of things to do. So I got those three females keep me busy. As I said, Lucky's doing really well. Well, I wouldn't say really well. She's doing better. She's doing better, and she hasn't actually done any damage to us in a while. And she's just so scared of so many things, and she thinks we're going to attack her. I don't know why. So we're going through trainers, and she's on anti-anxiety medication. The other day, I was calling some humane society, the local shelter for lost dogs and so forth, and we're trying to get some of the trainers to help us, who have been helping us a great deal. And Lucky was asleep on her mattress as I was trying to talk to this woman on the phone. And Lucky lies. Well, you've seen dogs; they like to lie with their heads hanging off the edge. She was lying with her head off it, and sometimes she loses her balance in her sleep and she falls off. And while I'm talking to the woman, Lucky falls off her mattress and immediately she was attacking me. She started attacking me because she fell off the bed. I know that's what we do here at the bathtub. So anyway, that has nothing to do with what we're going to talk about. But this is Pointless Adventures, and that's a pointless story. Anyway, I'm going to do a second part of my Pointless Adventures in Hollywood, simply because I don't know. We just felt like doing some pointless adventures, and we started the first one, and I said there was going to be a second one. So excuse me, I'm probably going to repeat myself a few times. I do that. It's not just because I'm old and doddering. I just literally repeat myself all the time because I have only a few things really to say and only a few things of interest to talk about. So I have to keep repeating them. Anyway, I talked a bit about how I sold my first script, I think. I believe I don't even remember what I talked about in the first one. All I know is I wrote a script based on my first novel, History of Luminous Motion. And as I think I said in the previous one, when you're a novelist, your gimmick to get into Hollywood is you try to sell your book, and then when you sell the book, you try to get them to hire you to write a script so you get paid for the script. Because you don't want, when you're a writer, you don't want to be doing stuff for free. And so then you get paid for the script, and then when you finish with the script, like I turned that script for History of Luminous Motion in, and they didn't really like it, and they wanted someone else to do it. So I had the script, and I started showing it to agents, and I got a very interesting woman named Patty Detroit, who was at ICM, I believe, at the time. And then another woman came, Chris. I'm so sorry, I forget the name of the next woman that came along, who was really an excellent agent too. Anyway, they both really liked the script of History of Luminous Motion, and they started just making copies and sending it to people to see what they thought. And a lot of people liked the script I wrote. So I went through a period where I was flavor of the month in Hollywood for like about 10 days. This is the move. By the way, I give people terrible business advice. I always told my students, don't take my business advice. You know, when I got my 10 days in the sun, I wasn't in a hurry to capitalize on it. I really wasn't. Made me a little nervous that people thought I was actually a good writer and they wanted to hire me. So I went into a lot of meetings. I went to Hollywood at the time. I used to stay in Brian Moore's house and Brian and Jean Moore's house when they were gone. And I would go to Hollywood. And when I was there, the ICM people sent me to a lot of, almost every production company in town. It was really weird. Almost everybody had read the script, and it kind of developed a little bit of a reputation. People found it interesting. And I met all these different producers. I didn't really meet the top people. I met what were called development people. And the development people were all like 21 years old. The people who ran the development agents, the development section of these major corporations and these giant movie corporations, were basically 21, 22 years old. They just got out of college. I suspect some of their parents were big people, big shots in the business. They're all pretty attractive, very skinny, very young, very smart. And they all would bring me in and we'd sit and talk. And basically, I didn't quite realize this till probably years later. They wanted me to come in and pitch ideas to them. The title of this talk should be "How Not to Pitch Ideas in Hollywood," because I did not have any idea how to pitch anything. I still can't pitch anything to save my life. And I would go in and I would talk to all these different people in these different companies. And I would ask them, "So what are you doing?" And they'd ask me what I was doing, and I'd say, "Kind of nothing. I don't know." I would say what I always do as a writer. I'm working on something. I never would tell them it's going to be the greatest book. It is like 2001: A Space Odyssey meets Wings of Desire or something like that. Some were these crazy comparisons. If you've seen The Player, Altman's hilarious send-up of the movie business from the 80s, I think it is now, that's exactly what all these meetings were like. You would go into the meetings and they would try to pitch ideas, and they would try to compare two popular movies at the time. So, for example, when I would go to these meetings, the producers, these young development people, would try to pitch me. For some reason, they're pitching me their great movie they're working on. And they would tell me about these ideas they had, and they would call it developing these ideas. So they'd get an idea. This isn't the Woody Allen line. They'd take an idea and they develop it into a concept, or vice versa. That's what they were doing. They were developing this one through line into a 2-sentence line or something. I remember at the time, and this was the 80s. No, I take that back. This was the early 90s. And two of the big hits about that time you'll find out in a minute. So I go into one of the meetings. This one still sticks out vividly in my head. And they said, "Okay, so we have this idea. It's about a kid." And they would pitch it to me like, "Okay, a young boy gets out of school. He's just has trouble with his parents in high school. He runs away from home." I can't even pretend to pitch a film. It was about a young kid who runs away from home, and he joins a traveling baseball circus. I don't quite understand what it was, but it was basically a team that traveled from town to town and played like minor league baseball. And the kid is a good baseball player, so he gets into this team. And on the team, there's a big, kind of really ugly, crazy looking guy. And he's like he can hit the ball like miles and miles. He's like a super baseball player. And he just has this great strength. And the guys, they were telling me the story like they were the surprise ending. And it turns out that this giant baseball player is Frankenstein. Frankenstein's escaped. And somehow he's playing baseball. So anyway, then I was sitting there like trying to figure out what the hell these people were talking about. And then they finally said, "It's kind of like," and you can already tell what this is, Field of Dreams meets Dracula. I swear to God. Those were two popular movies at the time, and they made a lot of money. So they were trying to compare it to two. Basically, the compare it to movies sounds idiotic. But then when you start to think about it, these are companies that have to get $30, $40, $50 million at the time to make a stupid movie, a stupid popcorn movie. And they need to make the money people think that they're going to make money off it. So they always try to compare it to money-making movies. I remember I was talking to somebody, and I had no idea. They would talk to me, and they would say, "Do you think about this idea? What would you do with it? And how could you do it?" And every time I did a terrible job because I couldn't pitch anything. And one guy gave me some ideas for something. It was like a science fiction movie or evil corporations or something. And in the conversation, we were talking. I said, "Yeah, it sounds like a little bit like kind of a Blade Runner vibe you got going with this movie, Blade Runner." And the guy says, "Yeah, kind of a Blade Runner vibe." And I go home, and I hear from the same guy. I'm sure all these people. I don't think any of these people were ridiculous. By the way, I think they're just trying to do good jobs. But he calls me up about 2 days later, and he says, "I was thinking about your Blade Runner idea. Like I had an idea that I was trying to sell them, but I was just kind of comparing it out, pulling it out of my ass." He says, "I looked it up, and Blade Runner really wasn't very successful when it came out," which is probably true. It wasn't a big hit when Blade Runner came out. There weren't big lines around it. It kind of slowly became famous. And he says, so we can't do that. I said, well, that's okay. We won't compare the movie to Blade Runner, that we haven't written and will probably never be made. Many of the movies I talked to them about then were kind of in development. It took for years. They seemed to come out like 10, 15, 20 years after I talked to them. It takes forever. Development hell is what they call it. And there's a perfectly good reason for it. I was in another meeting where most of whom I really liked, and he started pitching me Moby Dick. Moby Dick. He started saying, this is, again, they didn't have anything. They didn't have scripts. They just said, this is the idea we're developing into a concept. And he started telling me this story about Moby Dick and how they were going to do Moby Dick for the 2000, what year was this? 1990s, the 1990s audiences. And he said, what we're going to do is, Moby Dick, it starts off, Moby Dick is swimming around the ocean with her babies. And a bunch of evil harpooners kill her babies. And Moby Dick hates people with harpoons. So she goes around destroying boats. And that's why Moby Dick is so mad in their version of the movie. In other words, nature's been treated badly. In other words, Moby Dick's the victim, right? So you can't make Moby Dick just an evil whale coming out and killing people. Moby Dick is a victim. And I remember saying, the first thing all I could think of, because I had no idea, I remember listening to the story just going, how are they going to make this movie? And the first thing I said to the guy, I think there's usually like 3 or 4 people. It's just like Larry David does these things. Larry David and Curb Your Enthusiasm, they obviously still have the same types of meetings. All I could think of is, I said, well, if you do it that way, Moby Dick's a girl. Is Moby Dick a sperm whale? Moby Dick's a girl, but well, I guess it doesn't really matter. Anyway, I couldn't figure out how to do that movie either. Finally, I did start going around. I talked to people, and I couldn't really hear. I couldn't pitch my own stuff to people. I tried, and I sounded pathetic. I really sounded pathetic. So I just kind of gave up and just listened to them pitch movies. And basically, I started chatting movies that I liked, which is not what they want to hear. They want to hear some project. But anyway, I went to a group at Columbia, and I met an producer named Harry Giddies. You'll know the name Giddies because it's from Jake Giddies in Chinatown. And Harry was a big friend of Jack Nicholson's. He'd come out to L.A., and I think they were friends and buddies since they were really young people in Hollywood. And he was an interesting character, and he wanted to do a movie based on the life of Chet Baker. This is a really wonderful biography of Chet Baker by James Gavin. It's called Deep in a Dream, The Long Night of Chet Baker. And this hadn't been published yet. This hadn't come out. But they had bought the rights to this book. And it was kind of a perfect movie for like good young actors. They were thinking about people like Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio, who eventually was attached to do a Chet Baker film. And they had this idea, and I really love 50s jazz. So I kind of got a little excited, which I normally didn't for most of the ideas that came along. And I was really interested in 50s and West Coast jazz. All of this was stuff I loved. So I remember thinking about it, and I went into the meeting, and I actually had a pitch. It was the closest I ever had to a pitch in my entire career, my brief career in Hollywood. And all I said was basically, this is about us. This is about California when everything was brand new. It was 1950s California. Everything was brand new. Everything was new. And Chet Baker looks like he's brand new. He looked like this beautiful, minted, and this pure voice. And I can't remember what more I said about it, but I wanted to do the first half of the film with the kid, this young, beautiful kid who gets into drugs. And Chet Baker was a terrible drug addict, a total asshole, really, from what I learned about the guy. And then we were going to cut because about 10 or 20 years into his career, Chet Baker gets into drug addicts, and he gets beat up, and all his teeth get knocked out of his face. And he teaches himself how to play the trumpet with false teeth, which is quite extraordinary. So I wanted to do a first act with a two-parter. First part, brand new California. Everything's beautiful. Everything's going to be wonderful. Second part, the dream is dead. California in the 60s and 70s, where it starts to get Southern California, just pollution and ugliness and ugly roads and so forth. And here's this guy with no teeth who looks like a drug addict trying to learn how to play trumpet again. Anyway, that was my only pitch I ever had. That was probably my biggest. I did a few Hollywood movies. That was the biggest job I had. I think I told about it. I did I don't remember if I talked about this. I did a script about a multiple personality, which I think I did talk about already. But what do I know? I have no idea. Anyway, I did meet John James, who wrote this really terrific book. If you're interested in Chet Baker, wonderful biography. The script went off. It was attached to various people. They say they threw my script out. I don't know it. I don't think it ever. A movie or two about Chet Baker did come out. Born to Be Blue, which I haven't seen, but that was my biggest thing in Hollywood. Oh, and then about halfway through, so I did this script. I think I said this before. This is the part I find interesting in Hollywood. So I turn in this first draft. I always said that, like I said before, I turn in the first draft. I do what I want to do. I do my favorite script. And then for free, I do a revision, doing whatever they want me to do. Because it's only one draft they're paying for you for. So they want to get you to rewrite it. So I did that. And then I talked to them about it. In good faith, I did the best job I could on a second draft. When I was back in Hollywood to have a couple meetings. And I won't say who it was, but a couple people said, you're so good. You're such a talented writer. That one of the big shots said, you're like Bo Goldman. You're like the next Bo Goldman. You're a terrific script writer. And I was sitting there going like, wow, yeah, I guess I am. Because I did do a pretty good job. And then literally 2 days later, the producers wanted me to come in and totally rewrite everything because they had gone into the meetings and they said, oh, we have to do all this stuff in that. And I was Bo Goldman. I was 1 minute Bo Goldman. The next minute I said, well, I'm not going to do any more work unless you put it in my contract. I get a new contract and I get paid. And I never heard from him again. They didn't speak to me. They looked for other directors. They didn't like my work after that, and they thought I was a crappy writer. So anyway, that's the whole Hollywood trajectory is kind of like this, and it was a lot of fun. I'm glad I did it. I have a few other adventures I can talk about in the future, but that's enough for now. Stay safe, and watch out for. Go watch a good movie. I love the movies.